All right, the quest to restore the Egyptian signs. We're still in chapter 1. Symbols and signs and the strategy to decode them. All right. Egypt's confusing funerary texts demonstrate an advanced knowledge of the 21st century quantum physics, molecular biology, space physics, bacterial genetics, and supramolecular chemistry. The science provides Egyptian pharaohs and nobility with answers to profound ontological questions such as who are we, is there life after death, and how does our universe function? Buried in pyramids and tombs for centuries, the wisdom of the pharaohs remained masked even through Jean Francois's Champollion cracked the code for Egyptian hieroglyphics in 1822. Although this event was an advanced 19th century scholars struggled with little success to interpret the hidden meaning of the hieroglyphics, glyphs, and the images. Because the pharaohs veiled their impressive scientific knowledge in the religious literature of double signified signs and symbols with related artwork, deciphering the meaning of the symbolic system is still a daunting task for modern Egyptologists, prompting many scholars to dismiss the funerary corpus as confusing, unintelligible, and primitive. According to the confusion, part of the confusion stems from the language of the symbolic system itself, which contains ideograms of signs, phonograms or sound signs, and number signs, relative artwork, and its symbolism of actions, gestures, colors, and literary metaphors. However, these words, objects, persons, things, actions, patterns, and meta symbols of signs pointing beyond human experience, point to both chemical reactions and the Earth's magnetic sphere and the quantum cell. In other words, the macrocosmic events in the space physics of Earth mirror the biology, chemistry, physics, and genetics of particles in the quantum world. Here's a graph, sort of a graph of the chart of the idea streams. Method. Because language with its words and symbols is not simple and reliable matching of the signified and the signifier. An examination of each meta symbol within the context of the funerary corpus is necessary to understand and restore the effaced Egyptian sign. A holistic approach considers each sign's potential for meaning within the full context of the whole group of signs. The assumption underlying this approach is that the funerary texts from the Old Kingdom to the New Kingdom are unified in their presentation of key ideas. Fortunately, when one sign gives birth to another to form a family of meaningful signs within two texts, then they expand into an interconnected city of signs within multiple texts and interpretation. The interpretant can be confident that the lost meaning is being restored to the sign. Our quest to discover a coherent and interconnected city of signs applicable to the entire corpus of funerary text itself. Therefore, this work investigates 8 different texts spanning a time period of 2,000 years. To begin this process by testing the unity assumption and organization of the earliest Egyptian writings into complementary strands of ideas was necessary. A review of 759 pyramid texts and 1185 coffin texts resulted in a comparative table of 108 key themes or idea strands, and interpretants using this base of idea strand along with evidence from later texts, we will identify, analyze, and assign a possible meaning to each sign. In each process of decoding signs, the new meaning will be framed in a simple equation after an analysis of the evidence. The equal sign in the equation represents the words points to. Then, for easy identification, the decoded signs will be tabulated in a matrix that matches the Egyptian ideal sign with a possible modern science parallel. We will also consider the etymology of the Egyptian word as well as the unity and coherence of the interpreted signs. Our task for part 1 and part 2 is to build a base of interconnected signs, defining a model that explains the dynamics of Egyptian afterlife. To aid the reader in understanding the science, complex concepts and processes are summarized more than once due to their repeated appearance in different funerary texts. In part 3, we will continue building our city of signs and testing our model by analyzing the signs in the 12 divisions or hours of the Amduant in the Book of Gates. Part 4 addresses the signs in the Book of Two Ways, the edifice of Taharqa, and the Book of the Dead, including the Tibetan recession, to test the continued unity and coherence of interpretation in our expanding model, defining the nature of the afterlife activities. In part 5, we will draw conclusions from a model based on the city of living signs, reconstructing from the mental experience of the kings and nobility. In this way, we can understand how the signs work together to reveal the lost Egyptian wisdom that is buried within a language that deceives us by destroying the sign and its entire logic. The flood of language misunderstood and inflated that has swamped history as the essential truth and drowned the voice of nature can be damned. Both the pyramid text and the coffin text exhibit similar idea strands that describe ancient Egyptian religion of science. The scientific concepts are embedded in a religious narrative, detail the afterlife adventures of the deceased who desires eternity and transformation. In this magical process of the recreation, the dead pharaoh or king becomes a god. He does not die again or go upside down. He is not seized by the earth god. Not only is the dead king a celestial being, but he is also a magician, a falcon, a flowing fluid, a snake with many coils, and the eye of Horus that pours out of the star. Add to this the claim that he is self-created, unique, and firstborn. We have a being that is beyond human, an overman, an ultra-human, something the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche and the pathologist Pierre Teilhard de Chardin would have appreciated. However, in order to obtain this afterlife transfiguration, The dead king must follow specific directions using the earth and the gods as stars as guides. By following the advice in the funeral text, the dead king joins the sun god Ray's ferry boat for the voyage across the netherworld of the Duat, and the magical overcomes the evil-faced serpent Apophis. Isis, the lady of provision, and Thoth, the scribe of the gods, assists the dead king in his journey through the Black Duat. The king overcomes the double lion and judges the two rivals, Horus and Seth. Horus overcomes Seth and the rivals are united. This results in the restoration of the Eye of Horus and the risen Osiris, along with the birth of the king's new form, which is nourished, clothed, and rising in the east like the morning star. The risen king is now in the great word. He issues from the cold, and his double goes with him wherever he goes. This story mirrors the victorious hero journey, which turned out to be simply a chemical reaction played out on a quantum stage. In essence, afterlife deities, events, places, birds, serpents, and other Egyptian signs point to a 21st century scientific idea when decoded. Just look at the chronology right here. Chronology. The scientific funerary texts proclaim that the human body harbors an immortal consciousness that can choose to be transfigured at death into a longer living species by means of a specific chemical pathway. The secret knowledge inscribed in the pyramids of the 5th and 6th dynasty was only for the king and the royal families. These old kingdom pyramid texts deny the death of the king, encouraging him to awake for the afterlife journey through the dark Duat, the place of transformation. In time, the nobility were informed of the secret afterlife knowledge in the first intermediate period. The coffin texts carved in coffins of prophet individuals were adapted from the pyramid texts and shared with the wealthy nobility. Dated to the Middle Kingdom, the Book of Two Ways was discovered on the floorboard of a group of wooden coffins from a Bersheth region in Middle Egypt. The royal tomb of the 18th and 19th dynasties preserved the litany of Sun and Amduat, the Book of Gates, the Book of Preserve and Litany of the Sun, the Amduat, the Book of the Book of Akur, the Book of Caverns, the Book of Day and Night, and the Book of Divine Cow. Finally, the Book of the Dead on papyrus roll inside the coffins of the rich aided the deceased in the afterlife. This entire Egyptian corpus detailing modern scientific concepts can be dated back to 2520 BCE to 664 BCE. Almost 4,500 years before our recent advances in research due to high-tech satellite computers, imaging devices, and ultraviolet spectroscopies. Take a look at his sources. These are the books she just referenced. If you wanted to check them out. What Hermes said about T-duality. All right, now. This thesis also investigates the cryptic meaning of the state by legendary alchemists alchemist, Hermes Trismegistus, about the operation of the sun. What is below like that which is above, and what is above is like that which is below, to accomplish the miracle of the one thing. At the time Hermes made this statement, he was completely unaware that the 21st century superstring theorist would define his idea as T-duality. Superstring theory posits that the fundamental units of nature are not zero-dimensional point particles, but tiny one-dimensional filaments called strings. The size of a typical string loop is the Planck length, 10 negative 33 centimeters, about 100 billion times smaller than an atomic nucleus. What T-duality suggests is that a Planck length scales the universe looks just the same as it does as a large scale, which means that if our universe were to shrink less than Planck length, we would realize a dual universe as the universe original large-scale universe collapse. As the deceased states, the two skies go to me, and the two earths come to me. Briefly put, superstring theorists share the same opinion as Hermes. What is below is like that which is above. If Hermes could say more, he might tell us that death enables us to journey from our visible world to a dual invisible Planck length universe where our afterlife begins. However, Hermes would also remind us that the designed Egyptian afterlife is also accessible to those who have knowledge of the path. Keeping Hermes' statement in mind and using the idea strand from the least corrupted pyramid texts and coffin texts, let's explore the Egyptian idea of the afterlife in the interest of learning more about their system of science that seemed to eliminate the fear of death for those who possess knowledge, the kings and the nobility. As mentioned, idea strands in the pyramid and coffin texts are identified by a number of ease of reference. Idea strand 13 through 27 relates to the Egyptian direction for their path to eternity and are the focus of our first objective. Objective 1, our first task is to determine if there is a scientific evidence for the Egyptian path to eternity, as it is outlined in the pyramid and coffin text. Beginning with idea strands 13 through 27, we will examine the possibility that the direction for the king's journey might map the actual pathway through the sky.